TV soap news and spoilers say that the air in the hospital room hung heavy with the scent of antiseptic and unspoken truths. Asley stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the pale morning light filtering through the blinds, her auburn hair catching glints of gold. She stared out at the sprawling cityscape, her mind a whirlwind of emotions, caught between the love she felt and the nagging suspicion that something was terribly wrong. Derek, confined to his wheelchair, or so she believed, watched her from across the room, his heart pounding with the weight of a secret that threatened to unravel everything they had rebuilt. Their story was one of second chances, a fragile tapestry woven from the threads of a tragic accident that had brought them back together after years apart. The car crash that had left Derek supposedly paralyzed from the waist down was, in his own words, a blessing in disguise. It had forced Asley back into his life, rekindling a love that had once burned brightly before misunderstandings and youthful pride tore them apart. But the truth, buried beneath layers of carefully crafted lies, was far more complex. Derek was not paralyzed. He had recovered months ago, his legs regaining strength in secret, hidden from Asley and the world. The deception had started as a desperate bid to keep her close, but now it was a ticking time bomb, threatening to detonate their fragile happiness. The accident, a catalyst for reunion. The accident had been catastrophic, or so it seemed. A year ago, Derek's car had skidded off a rain-slicked road, crashing into a guardrail with a sickening crunch. The headlines screamed of tragedy, local man paralyzed in near-fatal crash. Asley, then a rising star in the world of investigative journalism, had been covering a story in the same city when she heard the news. Despite their painful history, 5 years of silence after a bitter breakup, she rushed to his side, driven by a mix of guilt, nostalgia, and a love that had never fully faded. In the sterile hospital room, amidst the beeping monitors and the hum of fluorescent lights, they reconnected. Derek, pale and bandaged, his eyes filled with a vulnerability she had never seen, spoke of parallel universes and what-ifs. "What if we hadn't fought that night?" he whispered one evening, his voice raw with emotion. "What if we had stayed together? In some other world, Asley, we're happy. We're whole." Asley, her heart aching, had no answers. She forced a smile, her journalist's instincts warring with her emotions. She wanted to believe in the world Derek painted, a world where they could rewrite their story. But something in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, perhaps, kept her from fully embracing his vision. She returned to her work, diving into her latest investigation, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. To them. The proposal, a moment of truth. Months passed, and their relationship deepened, built on late-night conversations and shared dreams of a future together. Asley found herself falling for Derek all over again, his charm and vulnerability disarming her defenses. She began to see him as her home, the one place where she truly belonged. One evening, under the soft glow of a setting sun, she made a decision that would change everything. She found Derek in the garden of the rehabilitation center, the scent of blooming roses mingling with the crisp autumn air. He was in his wheelchair, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes tracing the horizon. Asley's heart raced as she approached, her resolve firm. She dropped to one knee, her hands trembling as she took his. "Derek," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her, "I know life hasn't been kind to us. But I believe in us. I want to build a beautiful, meaningful life with you. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to hold its breath. Derek's eyes widened, a kaleidoscope of emotions flickering across his face, love, fear, guilt. He wanted to tell her the truth, to confess that he was no longer the broken man she thought he was. But the words caught in his throat, trapped by the fear of losing her. Instead, he smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and whispered, "Yes, Asley. Yes." The moment should have been perfect, a culmination of their journey back to each other. But beneath the surface, the cracks in their foundation were widening. Derek's lie, once a small deception meant to buy time, had grown into a monstrous secret that threatened to destroy everything. Madison, the truth seeker. Enter Madison, the sharp-eyed nurse who had been assigned to Derek's care. With her no-nonsense demeanor and keen attention to detail, Madison was not one to miss inconsistencies. She had noticed subtle signs that Derek's condition was not as he claimed: slight movements in his legs when he thought no one was watching, a strength in his grip that belied his supposed frailty. Her suspicions grew when she reviewed his medical records, noting discrepancies between his reported symptoms and the results of his last physical therapy session. Madison was not just a nurse, she was a truth seeker, driven by a need to protect her patients and ensure justice. She had seen too many people hurt by lies, and something about Derek's story didn't add up. Late one night, as the hospital corridors grew quiet, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She pulled Derek's file, her eyes scanning the pages with a growing sense of unease. The records showed improvement, significant improvement, that Derek had never mentioned. A follow-up examination was scheduled, and Madison resolved to be there, to see for herself if her suspicions were correct. The examination was a turning point. Under the guise of routine tests, Madison observed Derek closely, noting the way his muscles responded to her touch, the absence of atrophy that should have been present in a truly paralyzed patient. When she asked him to perform simple movements, he hesitated, his eyes darting nervously. But the evidence was undeniable. Derek could walk. He had been lying to everyone, most of all, to Asley. Madison faced a moral dilemma. Should she confront Derek directly, giving him a chance to come clean? Or should she go to Asley, revealing the truth and risking the destruction of their rekindled love? She chose to wait, to gather more evidence, but the weight of the secret was heavy. She knew that the truth, once revealed, would be a storm that could sweep away everything in its path. The unraveling. As the days turned into weeks, Derek's deception began to take its toll. He lived in constant fear of discovery, his nights plagued by nightmares of Asley's betrayed eyes. He wanted to tell her, to confess and beg for forgiveness, but the longer he waited, the harder it became. Every touch, every smile from Asley felt like a knife twisting in his heart. He had built their future on a lie, and the foundation was crumbling. Asley, meanwhile, was grappling with her own doubts. Her journalist's instincts, honed by years of uncovering hidden truths, refused to let her ignore the inconsistencies in Derek's story. Why did he avoid certain conversations about his recovery? Why did he tense when she mentioned physical therapy? She tried to push the thoughts away, to focus on their engagement and the life they were planning, but the doubts lingered, a shadow over their happiness. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of their shared apartment, Asley confronted him. "Derek," she said, her voice soft but firm, "is there something you're not telling me? About your recovery, about anything?" Derek froze, his heart pounding. This was his chance, his moment to come clean. But fear gripped him, and he forced a smile. "No, Ash. I'm just tired. It's been a long road." Her eyes searched his, looking for the truth. She wanted to believe him, to trust in the man she loved. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing. The revelation. The storm broke on a rainy afternoon, when Madison could no longer keep silent. She found Asley in the hospital cafeteria, her face pale and drawn. "Asley," Madison said, her voice low but urgent, "we need to talk. It's about Derek." Asley's heart sank. She followed Madison to a quiet corner, her mind racing with possibilities. Madison didn't mince words. She laid out the evidence, the medical records, the observations, the undeniable truth that Derek was no longer paralyzed. She spoke with compassion but firmness, knowing the pain her words would cause. Asley's world tilted. The man she had proposed to, the man she had dreamed of a future with, had been lying to her. The betrayal cut deep, a wound that bled with every memory of their rekindled love. She felt foolish, betrayed, and utterly heartbroken. Without a word, she stood and walked out into the rain, her tears mingling with the downpour. When she confronted Derek that evening, the air crackled with tension. He stood in their living room, not in his wheelchair, but on his own 2 feet, the truth laid bare. "Asley," he began, his voice breaking, "I was going to tell you. I swear. I was so afraid of losing you." "Losing me?" Asley's voice was a whisper, laced with pain. "You lost me the moment you chose to lie. How could you, Derek? After everything?" He reached for her, but she stepped back, her eyes blazing with hurt and anger. "I thought we were building something real," she said. "But it was all a lie. You made me believe in a version of you that doesn't exist." The aftermath, a path to redemption? The days that followed were a blur of silence and sorrow. Asley moved out, needing space to process the betrayal. Derek, alone with his guilt, grappled with the consequences of his actions. He had wanted to protect their love, but in doing so, he had destroyed it. He began attending therapy, not for his legs, but for his heart, seeking to understand why he had clung to the lie for so long. Asley, meanwhile, threw herself into her work, using her journalism to channel her pain. But the story of Derek lingered, a wound that refused to heal. She wondered if she could ever trust again, if love could ever be real after such a betrayal. Yet, in her quiet moments, she remembered the love they had shared, the moments of genuine connection that had felt so true. Could there be a path to forgiveness? To redemption? Madison, watching from the sidelines, felt a mix of guilt and relief. She had done what she believed was right, but the cost was high. She reached out to Asley, offering a listening ear, and slowly, a friendship formed. Through their conversations, Asley began to see the complexity of human frailty, the ways in which fear and love could intertwine to create devastating mistakes. The future, a fragile hope. Months later, Derek reached out to Asley, not with grand gestures, but with a simple letter. In it, he poured out his heart, acknowledging his mistakes and begging for a chance to make things right, not as a lover, but as a friend. He was working on himself, he wrote, trying to become a man worthy of her trust. Asley read the letter under the same hospital window where their story had begun, the cityscape stretching out before her. She felt a flicker of hope, not for the love they had lost, but for the possibility of healing. She didn't know if she could forgive Derek, or if they could ever rebuild what had been broken. But she knew one thing, the truth, however painful, had set them both free. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Asley folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to face it, one step at a time. In the world beyond the gates of their shared past, Asley and Derek were no longer bound by lies. Whether they would find their way back to each other, or forge separate paths, only time would tell. But in the wreckage of their love, there was a glimmer of something new, a chance to rebuild, not on deception, but on truth. We hope you enjoyed it and look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe TV soap news and spoilers for more updates on Beyond the Gates.